welcome back to the Onward Shift podcast. Today we're fortunate enough to have Will back with us for round two. How are you, Will? How are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks, Fish.
Amazing. I'm really excited about this podcast because it's something that's personally affected me and I just can't wait to get into it. And I want to kick things off with a statistic. And the statistic is around 8 million men struggle with loneliness any any time in a week just in the UK. Now, how on earth have we got to that stage, and what can we do to make things better?
Well, okay, so it's a huge number, and the idea that so many men are experiencing any form of loneliness is shocking,
Hmm.
and to hear that so many are doing this on a weekly basis, and there's different forms of loneliness as well that we could sort of maybe help clear up the picture. You can have emotional loneliness, so that's where um, a close partner is missing. You don't have someone to share those sort of intimate moments with. So there's one form of loneliness. But you can also have social loneliness where you don't have a support group around you, a group of guys who all see the world in roughly the same way, or even drastically different ways, but all together in some sort of collective. And there's a third form which can be really shocking, where you have this environmental, permanently disconnected from everyone sense of loneliness, where yet you really are, as far as you can see, so different from everyone around you that you are truly on your own. Now, you could have all of those going on at once, or you might have only one of them, but they're such powerful forces that leave us isolated, and that's not a good place for us to be. We're herd animals. We're designed to be in groups. We're designed to be in partnerships with others. We're not, I'd say most of us are not designed to be hermits living on our own.
Hmm.
Hermits are unusual in the grand scheme of things. And yet here in this world, we now seem to have a separation where, and maybe it links into role models, or maybe it links into the changes in work practice. I was going to mention how, back in the day
Hmm.
when I was a lad, that long ago, I know, um, the films on the telly were westerns.
Okay.
That's who we saw, and that's where all these standard role models perhaps came from. The strong, solitary, not saying much cowboy character who fought for good and generally had very simple stories to work through, but was a very clear-cut good guy. But then I was thinking it through and thinking, well, actually, the westerns probably just picked up on what was already there. So
Hmm.
maybe this is a longer-standing sort of idea coming from a world where we all did much more physical things.
Okay.
We were, and we had to be in groups. We had to be backed up and supported by the other guys around us because what we were doing was hard, difficult work. And maybe it was okay then because, yeah, not that I know much about cowboys and ranching, okay, but imagine on a ranch and all that, there's a lot of cowboys there. You're not going to necessarily get on with all of them, but some of them you're going to really see the world in the same way, and you all share the same work, so you have the same experiences binding you together. Now we're doing much more intellectual work, we're doing much more remote work,
Hmm.
and maybe there's not so much a sense of lots of guys out there like us. We just don't experience them. We just don't have any contact with them. So it's maybe caught up with that the world has changed and the models that we're working with haven't. Maybe. But how does that sound?
So it sounds interesting, but I guess one of the questions that's literally just triggered to
Yeah.
mind is, do you think loneliness has anything to do with your upbringing? Because I don't mean the television you've watched or anything like that, but more parental. As in, could loneliness stem from not having a supportive mother or father? Is it because then if you're already feeling at a really young age isolated from the world, you're not feeling
Mm.
love like something we mentioned in the last podcast
Yes.
together,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're trying to figure life out by yourself, and then you're kind of going, oh, this is quite lonely, and then it's no longer a societal issue. It's the fact that you don't know another way out of it. I don't know if that makes.
No, okay. I mean, that would make sense. Building blocks are set in place during our childhood for how we're going to handle our lives in the rest of the time. So imagine that, yeah, you were in a family unit where there wasn't a lot of support.
Mm.
How would that impact you? Would that leave, if there was a lot of criticism or maybe high expectation, you could feel pressurized and unloved, isolated. That might, and imagine also a situation where siblings,
Mm.
so family of three or four, and one child matches up with the parental targets. So, this is all about really achieving at work or really achieving academically, and the other child doesn't.
Mm.
That could really push you into a space where you don't have a sense of value. And certainly you don't see yourself as being on the right team, in with the good guys, because your other sibling is doing much better at the thing that matters. You're not achieving that way. So yeah, it could, family environment could prime you to be lonely and might also then prime you to act in a particular way in order to deal with it.
Mm.
So yeah, maybe acting out or looking for gangs and getting involved in gang behaviour because you're looking for acceptance from any other group. Yeah, you could suddenly find yourself in a different space.
It's really interesting because I think when we go back to like really young people, you do see that, don't you? Where you always see this kid who'll be completely isolated from everyone else. They'll
Mm,
be playing by themselves. They'll be, they'll just be completely away from the playground environment, if you like. And you can't, I just honestly, as you were talking, I just thought, I wonder why. I wonder if it's something that children are embedded with and they can't escape it as they're growing up. Because then you're right, they go through a phase where they might join gangs and somewhere where
yeah.
they've essentially got an older brother or
Yes.
someone to aspire to or something, and then it just kind of that doesn't work out, and then they go into work and then they're isolated there. And I just thought it was really really fascinating. So I want to quickly touch on the construction industry because I think
Okay.
loneliness in the construction industry is a huge factor that plays on a lot of people's mental health. We've got construction workers who live in London, but they travel all around the country, leaving their wife, children at home. But
Yeah.
when they're away, they could be away for 3, 4 weeks at a time. And in those 3 or 4 weeks, they then get addicted to really bad things like gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, drugs addiction, prostitution. How can we kind of get rid of that culture? We can't get rid of the culture, but what can we do to help these men who are by themselves consistently?
Well, there's the big challenge, isn't it? Because they're by themselves, perhaps working in different groups. Yeah, as you say, every job they go away, they're with a different group of guys, so they're not meeting up with friends, and then they're in this situation where if they're not working, they've got time on their hands in a city they don't know, with guys they don't know. What else are they going to turn to but quick fixes? So yeah, I could see it being alcohol, drugs, gambling, anything that gives you a lift, softens the impact of the difficulties you're facing. Because remember, again, we're talking about guys, and most of us don't ever ask for help.
Mm,
We don't do that.
yeah.
We don't. We just, because of the role models, whatever. It's our job just to get on with stuff. Man up, yeah,
Mm,
man up and get on with it. And that leaves us in this situation. Well, if I'm the only person who can help me, what am I going to do? Well, I'll just start with one drink, yeah,
yeah.
because that works. That makes me feel a bit more relaxed. And one drink leads to two and three and four. We get into the practice of it, so we have to take more alcohol. The whole thing is a downward slope that's very easy to get onto and really hard to get off from, especially if the work doesn't change. If you carry on doing that sort of work. Gambling, same sort of problem, different reasons. I mean, there is actually a sense of a camaraderie when you're gambling.
Really?
If you're in a bookies or whatever, because you're all kind of there cheering on whatever it is that you're watching. But it's, again, we're looking for the sense of belonging, the hit of actually getting things right, and the winning, that feeling of winning,
Mm,
which can be really powerful because elsewhere in our life there is no sense of winning.
mm,
We're slogging away, we're doing the work, but actually it feels terrible, it feels hard, and nobody else gets it.
Hmm.
partly because we don't talk about it, but also because nobody talks about it, so there is no background story for us all to hook into.
Absolutely. And I think something you've touched on a couple times already is role models. Now, as soon as you say role model, I
Yeah.
ask myself, who's my role model?
Mm.
And as you've been talking, I've been kind of in the back of my mind going, God, I hope you don't ask me that. So I've kind of jumped in front and just said it myself. But honestly, Will, I don't. I'm 31 years old. I don't have a role model. I do not aspire to be similar to or like another man. I
Mm.
think there's cool dudes out there who are
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
cool things, but I don't aspire to be like them. Now, do you think in this society, the world we live in now, we have good role models? And what would a role model look like? As a guy, we
Well, that's the catch, isn't it? Because if you think about the people who get presented to us on telly or on YouTube or anywhere else, they're presented because they're exceptional.
that's right.
And I don't know about the rest of the guys out there, but I am not
No,
exceptional. I'm
neither
a
am
pretty
I.
average sort of
Yeah,
bloke.
same.
So while I can admire these guys and what they do, there's no chance of me ever being like them.
Hmm.
So in that sense, yeah, there are aspirations. Okay, I'll go with that. Yeah, there are aspirational sort of things that we can lean into, how I would like to be, where I would like to target getting to. But it's not it's not nearly as comfortable as, yeah, this feels right for me. This feels like I'm doing, a good way of being
Hmm.
is what I've adopted. And I think that's where we could go in our conversation a bit, because maybe there's more of an idea that we should become our own role models, actually work out what matters to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very much like a counselling session. I do not have the answers in a counselling session,
Hmm.
but what I do have is experience nudging clients towards their answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine that actually our role model, the best role model for us, is already somewhere in our minds. It's already in pieces like a jigsaw,
Hmm.
and our job is to pick up on the things that matter to us and then say, okay, this is the sort of guy I want to be.
Hmm.
And then the second step is you have to then put yourself in a place where other people have similar views.
Yeah.
Because if you're out of step with the guys around you, it's not going to work.
Okay, so here's a question for you then, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's say, no, I'll just say it how it is. I would love to learn how to dance, right? I'm talking
Okay.
maybe a bit of salsa or something. I think it's
Okay.
so cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I could never move my hips like the way some of these guys do because I'm just not built that way.
Yep. Yeah, I got it.
But
Yeah.
it's so cool. But when you look at society, men don't really do that. And you think to yourself, like, is that a stigma attached? What is it that instantly I go, oh, I want to do this, but then I'm like, oh, actually, I better not do that because it's a bit weird. How can we even? I feel like there's so much that needs to be broken down stigma wise, and then we'll find some answers. But let's say somebody else, for example, might have another perfect vision of what they want to be,
Yeah.
but society won't accept that. Or you feel as if society doesn't accept that. So how do you
That's the twist.
overcome
Yes.
that hurdle?
Well, the idea I'd be pushing at this point would be, imagine that it's not about a single answer. Imagine that, yeah, we're not going to turn you into a professional dancer.
Hmm.
Okay, that's not where we're going. So you don't have to think of yourself as, this is who I am, a dancer. This
Okay.
is something that I'm going to add in, additives to putting it on top. So you stay exactly as you are,
Hmm.
and we add in this extra aspect of, yeah, I go to salsa classes, and having been to three, I realize I'm going to need hundreds, but it's okay because that's what I'm doing on top of everything else I'm doing. So we actually broaden the mix and say, I'm not defined by a single thing. I'm a complicated mix of all the things I am.
Hmm.
So I'm, yeah, a bloke of a particular age, and I'm into engines. Yeah, I'm really into tools. Yeah, I get that too. You don't see spanners much these days, do you? But anyway, sorry, off topic. But that part of me is quite a small part. Obviously, I'm a counsellor. I talk to guys a lot. That feels like an important part of who I am. But I've got a whole raft of friends who've never seen that side of me. They're mates, and we go back to school. And let's just say I probably wasn't counsellor material when I was at school. But it's okay to have these quite different parts of ourselves, personas, if you like. Imagine the idea that, yeah, at work and at home, you're different. You can be seen to be different, but you're not faking anything. What is just that at work, you've got your work persona. At home, you've got your home persona. These are just different viewpoints of who you are. Because we're really complicated, you're allowed to have lots of them. So, yeah, when you're at the dance class, they would see a different side to you again. It's not fake. It's just that we're complicated and we're allowed to have all these different aspects going on. But coming back to your original point, to get past the idea of this is socially unacceptable, we go with the additive. So, yeah, okay, at work, no one wants to see you salsering around the building site. Okay, they just don't want to see that. But that's okay because that isn't what you'd be doing. But when you're doing salsa, you'd be in a group of people who are into the same thing. So we're back to this idea of you have to put yourself in the space which makes sense for the part of you that you're trying to express, the part of you that you're trying to sort of build up on.
Absolutely.
So it's additive. We're not changing anything. We're not redefining you. We're just saying here's another aspect to who you are.
That's really interesting, and I think that kind of goes straight back into the loneliness for men as well, because I guess if you're going to William Hill and you're getting that feeling of being around people in the same boat as you, but that is not necessarily a good habit. I guess they
Yeah.
could have another habit of jiu-jitsu or whatever they're into, and they kind of have to channel that energy into, if they're in Manchester, finding the closest jiu-jitsu club there,
Yeah.
or boxing club in Liverpool, or whatever they are passionate about, to find that sense of whole for themselves. But again, when we look at these types of things, it's so hard. Like after a day's work,
Yes.
you don't always want to go out and do something, but at the same time, you're suffering because you feel this emptiness inside. You're not around your wife, you're not around your children, your
Yeah.
friends are a million miles away. Your work colleagues are, at the end of the day, work colleagues, and you can have a bit of fun and you can have a bit of banter, but I couldn't personally spend 60, 70 hours a week
Yeah.
with work colleagues. End up getting fatigued by that, for me anyway.
Yeah.
So what can these guys do? They're sitting there in a hotel room by themselves. They're having these intrusive thoughts of, oh, let me just have one more drink, or let me just sit at the bar for an
Yeah.
extra hour, just to feel like they're surrounded by people. What can these guys do to feel whole again, like when they are away? Because we can't escape from the fact they have to work away. So we need to help
Yeah.
them find solutions to feel comfortable.
Yeah. And this plays back into the idea, I think, very specifically for guys, that we're not good sitting around with our thoughts.
Yeah.
It's just, um, it's not the most beneficial space to be in.
Mm.
So the thing then is, okay, we're better with activity. But I take your point, you've just done a day's work, you're knackered, you're not necessarily going to want to go off and do a 20-mile run or a
Yeah.
10-mile hike or whatever. But my normally opening pitch for clients is walking. We are designed to walk.
Mm.
Go for a walk. See what there is around you. Now, some people really like walking in cities and seeing stuff. Some people like walking in the countryside because it's a change. So you still have to work out what works for you. But starting with walking has got all sorts of benefits to it. One, you don't come back knackered and sweaty.
Mm.
You can walk and you can pay attention to stuff around you, and it isn't necessarily a high level, high impact exercise, but also because it's a very routine behavior. It seems to me that it's certainly come across a lot of times. Blokes think better when they're doing stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I know I
I
do.
don't know why that is. It's and guilty. It's me too.
Mm.
Um, so going off and doing something like a walk actually allows your thoughts to get sorted and processed in a different way to sitting down where you're feeling without any energy. It's
Mm.
actually a very negative space to be in. So if I was going to push anyone to start somewhere, I'd say put yourself up for a 15-minute walk, 20-minute walk, maybe half an hour, and it can be on a circle. I don't like doing a walk there and back. I don't like seeing the same stuff. So
Yeah.
I like to do a circle. But the idea would be to experiment with walking because it's good for you anyway, but it gets you out and it's not too draining
Mm.
and it might allow you to come up with other ideas because you can think while you walk. But it's still not if it isn't something you've done before, there's going to be a lot of resistance. It's going to be hard to start.
Mm.
And that possibly takes us into the idea, we have an inner critic whose job is to make sure that we don't mess up. But our inner critic generally seems to have a very harsh voice and is very punishing.
Okay.
So there is a space here for also modifying how we judge ourselves.
Mm.
But I don't want to lean into that one just yet, but it will
Of
come up
course.
later in our conversation because it's tied up with some of the other behaviors that we're looking at, um, including in this map
Yeah.
of loneliness um, and stuff.
Yeah. Inclusion and the rest of the things we've got.
Thank you. Yeah,
But I find it interesting because straight away I'm thinking of resistance. I love walking,
yeah,
so walking is one of my loves of life. I love doing it.
okay,
But if it's raining, I'm not leaving. Um, so
yeah,
straight away I'm thinking, living in UK, it's raining quite often. What other things can we do to? I guess also there's the other part of it as well. Okay, so let's say it's raining. I guess you could go to the gym. You could jump on a
yeah,
treadmill.
yeah.
You don't have to go fast, you don't have to go slow. You can just go at your own
No,
pace. I guess there is a solution to that. And gym memberships now are like 20 quid for a month or £25 for a month. So it's not crazy expensive. But what I guess that doesn't necessarily solve the loneliness part of it. It solves the part of not being in your own head for a long period of time. It gives you more creative time to think, I guess even level out any negatives you've had in the day.
yeah,
But how can we also start addressing the fact that these guys are lonely and they haven't got anyone to speak to? Or like, is it see, this is where I get a bit confused because
hmm,
I don't think male only groups is a good idea, and I don't think female only groups is a good idea because we're creating a huge diversity in women are different to men, men are different to women.
yeah,
We will never actually learn to be with one another. But then on the same token, I'm also seeing it from a different perspective of women and men need men. But how do we
yeah,
create these types of groups? I know there's like the walking clubs and Andy's Man Club, and there's other male clubs out
yeah.
there. But how do we create this type of community?
Well, okay, and that comes back to this idea of working out what you want to do. Okay, like the idea of you doing the dancing there. So imagine someone watching this clicks and suddenly says, "Actually, yeah, I really want to get into sports."
Okay.
Yeah, and I've always been really keen on football or whatever.
Mm.
So the push then is to go where that is available. Yeah.
Mm.
So you start off with the internal work of what is it I like to do, and it can be anything. Maybe it's cooking. Yeah, I want to become a pastry chef. And then once you've got the idea, it's a big step. I accept that it's not an easy thing to do. I'm not going to try and minimize it. But then you say, okay, well, where am I going to find cookery classes round here, or where am I going to find a football club round here at weekends, maybe, or even for the older guys, where am I going to find a walk-in football club? Which allows you to keep on playing football, even though you haven't got the energy of a 20 or 30 year
Mm.
old, but you still want to actually play. So, but the idea is to start with what matters to me, and then where am I going to find it around here? Yet the really hard bit is you have to go where your world will be, where these people are who think the same as you do.
Yeah.
But it's worth it because staying on your own, we all know, doesn't feel great.
Absolutely.
But it can become addictive is the wrong word, familiar, and then we confuse familiar with comfortable.
Mm.
we kind of get used to being on our own, even though we hate it, and then we become reluctant to undo it.
That's it.
And
Because you become
that's a really,
comfortable.
yeah, it's what I'm used to.
Mm,
Doesn't feel great, but I'm used to it, and and yeah, trying new stuff is always a little bit scary. So I've got a little bit scary, or I can stay where I am because I'm used to it.
mm,
And that's a tough one to break because the only person who can break it is me or you.
yeah, the
We
individual.
have to do it for ourselves.
That's really interesting because actually, as you're saying that, I'm thinking. There's been loads of times where I'm like, I really feel uncomfortably lonely, but I don't know what to do. And then, similar to what you've said, I've gone and found I used to do Krav Maga, which is a
Oh
martial
yeah,
arts, and I
yeah,
found a club, and I just went once, and that was it. Just went once. I pushed myself
yeah,
so bloody hard, and I just went once. And next thing you know, I'm there 3 times a week, and I was loving it. I'd done it for a few years, I think 2.5
yeah,
years until I left the area, and then I found another hobby. But yeah, absolutely, I think that's a really good point because you're right. It's no matter which city or town you're in, you will be able to find something close enough to get to, but it's you who has to put that first step in and go,
yeah,
I want this for myself. I'm gonna go do it, and just making it happen.
yeah. And it's a really, I'm not minimizing it. It's a
Of
really
course.
tough thing to do that first step. It's hard to deliberately put yourself in the way of new scary experiences,
Yeah,
especially when
absolutely.
you're feeling low already. So if you imagine you're already starting from a loneliness point of view, you're feeling pretty crappy.
Mm.
Where does the drive come from to possibly make things worse instead of making things better?
Yeah, absolutely. No, but although it is a hard step for anyone to take, it's the right step for them to take. And
Yeah,
I can imagine. I know I've been in those shoes anyway, where I've turned up to this Krav Maga class, and I think you feel like you're the only at the time. You feel like you're the only one who's struggling with this. Nobody will get it.
yeah,
You go to
yeah,
this class, and there's a group of guys there, all a bit timid. They're all a bit, standing in the corners at the back of the
yeah,
class, listening really passionately, but also arm's length, if you know what I mean. But
yeah,
then you go there a few times and you start chatting to people, and you go, oh yeah, I'm not coming here often. I'm kind of anxious, to be fair. And they're like, yeah, me too. And you think, oh, this isn't a me problem. This seems to be an us
no,
problem now.
yeah,
And then you build friendships, and I guess yeah, you build that community, and it's all positive things. I love that actually.
mm,
I do love that. That's a really good way forward for men to come out of, well, what a step for men to come out of the loneliness epidemic
yeah,
that's going out there. But I want to go back to role models because I think role
yeah,
models is such an important factor to play for men, especially younger men, and the lack of or the ability, like you said, the expectation is so high, the ability to achieve that. So then you constantly got
mm,
this pressure on yourself to go, oh, I want to be like this celebrity, but you
yeah,
consistently feel like a failure. In our everyday life, what can men do who are, my age and above, 30 plus, so that the younger men can aspire to us? What can we do to help the younger generation go, celebrities are cool,
yeah,
but like one of the examples I said this on a podcast, God, I think last year, was my brother-in-law. He was pushing the pram, um,
yeah,
and his baby, my sister's baby, was just laughing her head off. They were racing around, and I looked back and I was like, "That's cool. Like, I
yeah,
love it." He didn't care what anyone else thought.
no,
He was just having the time of his life, and so was the baby, and it was just really, really wholesome. But how can we show that to the younger men and go, "Look, yes, Ferraris and all that's really cool, but so is this, so is this. Like, this is something you can inspire to be."
okay. So on this sort of pitch, I'd be pulling back to, okay, this is about finding out what your values are, yeah,
Okay.
what matters to you, how you want to be treated, or how you want the world to be, because that's what you're going to then start to embody, and that leads on to behaviour. So you've got these two things
Yeah.
which are linked, but not as heavily linked as people maybe think. Your values are core to you, okay, and they're pardon me, they're probably not going to change much over your lifetime. Priorities might, but the values themselves aren't going to change much.
Oh, well.
Behaviors, on the other hand, they're like a suit of clothes. You can put them on, take them off. We can do that. You start with this is what matters to me, and it can be all sorts of things. It can be a single word. It can be a whole paragraph of explaining how you want the world to be around you, how you want people to treat you, and how you want to treat others. And then that moves on to, once you've cleared that in your mind and said, this is how I want to be, okay, what does that look like as a behavior? How would you actually show that at work, or yeah, socially, or in any other circumstance, at home? Because we're modeling this stuff because it matters to us, but by modeling it, you then also give the image to others, and they can say, well, actually, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, I'd like to be doing that. Yeah, it looks okay. It looks fun. Yeah, making your daughter laugh in a pram. Why wouldn't that be a good thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you look like a bit of a twit doing it, but actually, I'm not sure you do.
Yeah, I'm thinking that as well now. Maybe that was just an idea in my head of you will look silly doing it.
Yeah,
But I almost guarantee you other guys are looking around going, yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty cool actually. So I guess if that again goes back to what we think other people see in us
yeah.
is most likely not even true. They're probably thinking the complete opposite, but you're paranoid and you're just like, oh my God. So
Well, it's not so much paranoia. Remember the big three emotions that we never talk about: fear, embarrassment, and shame.
yeah,
And the last thing we want to be is embarrassed.
yeah,
We will run a mile.
yeah.
It's just not going to happen. We can do everything else, but no, embarrassment's not going to happen. And we have these, as you say, these sort of images in our head of how other people are judging us.
Mm.
So we're imagining what they're imagining. It's madness, but we all do it.
We do, yeah, 100%. It's so
Yeah.
easily done as well, and then it stops you. It's like I
Yes.
guess that's another reason guys don't go to these clubs or go for a walk by themselves, is because they probably think, oh, I don't want to go to work tomorrow and say to the guys I've just gone for a walk by myself, they're going to think I'm lame. But in fact,
Yeah.
if we change that and go, that's probably going to inspire another guy to do the same thing, because now they
Yeah.
look, and you never know, you might end up going for a walk together. It might be a bit safer, it might be a bit more
Yeah.
comfortable for you both. So that's really interesting. And when you talk about values, they don't change, but behaviors do. Could you
Yeah.
elaborate what a value looks like? Like,
Okay.
what would somebody say is a value to them?
All right. So let's pick a commonly quoted one in the press, and I'll expand on it. But
Okay,
integrity.
okay.
Okay. Sounds really good. We should all have integrity.
Mm,
But in my head, integrity means say what you mean, do what you say.
yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Basically, you don't hide anything. You're not tricking anyone. You know that this is important to me, whatever it is. Yeah, taking the kids for a walk in the park, whatever, that matters to me. So I'm sorry. Yeah, my Saturday mornings I take the kids out, so I can't do a shift at work or whatever.
Mm,
But that's where the challenges come in, because when you put something like my family's activities against work, the scales aren't the same.
mm,
Work is way more serious somehow, weirdly, than bringing up children to become useful, capable, competent adults,
mm,
which is a 20-year project.
of
But work
course.
somehow is more important than that. But it isn't. But we take so much of our identity from work that we lose that perspective of actually my role as a father or my role as a friend could be way more valuable and much more long lasting in terms of impact
Mm,
than what I'm going to do for a job. This particular contract I'm working on, yeah, it'll be over in 6 months. And then what? Who's going to remember?
yeah, that's
But
so true.
actually, yeah, my friends, they're still going to be there and they're still going to matter. And I really want them to still be there. So it's about checking some of the stuff that we tell ourselves secretly,
Mm,
that work is really important. Work is important because it gives a large part of our identity, but it's not the whole story.
no, absolutely.
We've got to have purpose, we've got to have something to do, but Our friends matter, our families matter, whatever else we might, even playing in the bloody football that we just decided we're joining the football team.
Mm.
Well, actually, they expect you to turn up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the deal. So the value, remember, I was say what you do, mean what you say, do what you say.
Mm.
It's about recognizing that everyone is looking at you for different signs of who you are.
Mm.
It's not easy. That's the other thing. I mean, this is not having values and then trying to live by them, is basically an exercise in repeatedly getting things wrong and trying again.
Yeah, 100%. And that's so hard.
Yes, it is, but that's the deal. I'm not expecting anyone to get this perfectly right and be the perfect bloke. That's not the deal. The deal is actually what you should be trying to do,
Mm.
because it'll make you feel better, it'll make the people around you appreciate you more, and the world might even get a little bit better. I mean, it's hard for any of us to change the world dramatically, but if enough of us did it, it would make a positive influence.
Yeah, I agree. And there was three things you've mentioned. It was embarrassment, fear.
Shame and fear.
Yeah. Could you maybe talk more about that and how we can overcome that? Because as a guy, you're right. Those three things I do feel. I do feel that
Mm,
regularly. I feel I feel embarrassment doing the smallest of things in life.
yeah.
yeah, I feel those things. How do I overcome them? Or as a society, how can we make it more or less impactful?
Well, okay. So yeah. So fear, embarrassment, and shame. Embarrassment is being anxious about what I've done.
Mm,
Shame is anxious about who I am. So shame can be way more powerful in terms of what it drives us to do or
mm.
to avoid. And fear, they're all kind of related in one big sense. This is about where we stand in the tribe.
Okay.
Now, we have lots of different tribes, and some of them are quite loose and maybe don't even really exist, but we feel that they do.
Mm,
So, yeah, you might have your work colleagues, yeah, and there's stuff you wouldn't talk about with them because the general tone is very blokey and, well, you know what I'm talking about.
mm,
And there might be other circumstances. There might be even at family, sort of family get-togethers. There might be the other spin where your job isn't as good as, let's say, your cousins or your uncles or whatever, and everyone seems to be doing much better than you're doing.
mm,
So you get this sense of, I'm not as good as they are. But the twist is, this is all in our heads. It's not reality.
mm,
It's not a fact. It's a feeling, a thought, a perception. It's all sorts of stuff, but it's not a fact. And we confuse our feelings and our thoughts with facts on a daily basis, so much so that it creeps in all over the place. But the tool here, and we did touch on it a bit earlier, or maybe it was before we started the call,
mm.
the tool here is this idea from compassion focused therapy, CFT, that we have two brains. Okay, so imagine we've got
Yeah.
the old brain. This is the animal brain that we had that says, I've got to hunt for my food and there's a scarcity of resources and I've got to beat everyone off to get to where I want to be.
Okay.
So there's all of that really powerful emotional stuff. And where I am in the tribe, in the pack, really matters. So I can't be at the bottom of the heap. I've got to be either top or near the top. I want to be top dog.
Mm,
So that's all really powerful embedded stuff. Old brain, been there a long time. And guys are good with that one, okay? Because generally there's anger which will drive you on to be top of the pack, anger which will allow you to fight for the resources you need, and anger will keep you safe. So there's old brain for guys.
mm,
Then you've got new brain. New brain's brilliant. New brain gives you rational thinking, imagination, the ability to talk about stuff, the ability to create stories. Absolutely brilliant tool.
mm,
But remember, underneath it is the old brain, which is still designed on some very basic rules. So sometimes our new brain gets driven by the old brain, and the stories we tell are horror stories about how bad we are, how bad we might be seen. And the trick, the thing here that we're actually talking about changing is stepping back and paying attention to our thoughts. That's all we're doing. We're not doing anything clever. We're not doing any heavy duty meditation here. This is just paying attention, thinking, you know, I'm feeling kind of anxious now. What's that about?
Hmm.
I think I'm feeling a bit scared of whatever. We're not trying to stop it. We're not trying to criticize ourselves. We don't need to join in on the inner critic. We're just paying attention to this stuff because the new brain can interpret all this stuff, look at it and say, oh, actually, no, it's not true. The old brain is still saying, no, 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 it is. It really is. But with our new brain, we can actually pay attention to this stuff and start to soften the impact, soften the sort of really loud shouting voice that says, we're not safe. We've got to do something about it. We're not safe here. We need to be top of the pack again, or I need to run away. We're not going to stop the old brain working. It's been around too long
Hmm.
and it does do some really useful stuff. What we need a new brain to do is say, what's going on here? Why am I feeling this way?
How do we do that? I know you said step back
Yeah,
and I guess not challenge, but question.
yeah. That have a question that works for you. The question would be possibly, yeah, what's going on, or why do I feel this way, or even how do I feel right now?
Hmm.
Because this is, I've got all the sensations, but I haven't got a word for it. I haven't got a name for it.
And the question I
And
have for that, sorry to interrupt. So the question I
yeah,
had for that
no,
is, as a guy, I don't bloody know. The truth is, nobody has. I know this sounds a bit crazy, but nobody's taught me emotions. Nobody's taught me how to
no,
question these things. So, what would be my first step? Like, I can. Okay, let's say I've got into work. Um, I'm just about to start this project. The project I've done 1,000 times over, but this time, for
yeah,
whatever reason, I'm feeling like, oh, I really don't want to do this. I've got so much anxiety. I've got, I'm really stressed out. It's not the healthy stress out.
mm,
It's an unhealthy stress out where I'm feeling a
yeah,
bit sick. Don't really want to do this.
yeah,
So then I step back. I go sit down at the desk and I go, what do I do? Like, okay, I've questioned it. Okay, why am I feeling this way? And my rational brain doesn't understand emotions. It doesn't understand
no,
how to vocalize those emotions without it being anger. So how does a guy step away from the anger and go, I feel this way because the last project was actually a bit of there's a few hiccups at this stage,
yeah.
and I pushed through that, but now I'm at the same stage of a new project. I'm feeling a bit like, oh God, here we go again.
Mm, okay, well, my normal opening sort of pitch for that one is I've got a sheet of A4,
Okay.
wasn't mine, okay, I didn't create it, which is emotional vocabulary. And imagine along the top, it's got the biggies, anger, fear. I can't think of what the others are at the moment, all along the top.
Hmm.
So it's got maybe half a dozen big emotions at the top. And underneath each one of those is, I think, about 30 different words describing that same emotion in serious, middling, or low.
Okay.
And what it literally is just a sheet of words of different ways of describing these feelings. And the starting point is, well, okay, have a look through the sheet, decide where you are in sort of the scale. I'm middling to high, and see what the words are there. See how they feel for you,
Hmm.
because what we're trying to do here is give you the tool where you actually say, ah, actually, no, I thought I was just angry, but actually I'm just a bit cheesed off, or I thought I was angry. I'm steaming mad. Okay, I am raging about this particular problem, and I need to know that I'm raging about it. That's what's going on for me, so I can have the conversation with whoever has triggered this particular event. But the idea is to literally, give yourself the vocabulary to start with.
So what was that? So I'm going to write this down. What was that sheet called, please?
Um, hang on a second. I'll just have a look at it here.
Thank you. Because what I might do is find it and I'll attach it to the podcast so that people have access to this because I've done so much therapy and I've never heard of this sheet. So I'm absolutely fascinated by it now.
Okay, well, I've got it here. It's a vocabulary of emotions slash feelings. One, two, three, four, six. There's 10 big feeling names along the top, and yeah, about 30 different um, varieties underneath,
Mhm.
strong, medium, and light. I'll bang it over to you. Yeah, after our call.
That would be phenomenal. Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah,
I'll share that. somehow as a link so people can actually
Mm,
access it. Because accessibility is a huge part of this. It's going
yes,
great. We've got this information now. How do I access that? And if I can attach it in, then great.
yeah,
People have that. So thank you so much.
yeah.
That would be awesome.
Okay, no worries. Yeah,
So I want to go back onto anger, men and anger. That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem with men. We don't know how to regulate our emotions. We don't have the vocabulary to regulate our
no,
emotions. Majority of the time, it comes across as anger.
yeah.
So when a guy is feeling angry about something, he feels so frustrated, he hasn't got the words to actually speak about his emotions or his feelings, and he just wants to just explode.
Yeah.
What should he do in that second? Should he walk away and go for a walk? What should he do?
It depends on your circumstances, but yes,
Hmm.
the only way you can diffuse anger is with bodily feedback. Okay?
What does that
This is
mean?
a bodily response. This is not anything that is easily controllable because your entire body will have been triggered now, and we're sitting in this state of, yeah, I'm ready to run or fight. That's where we are. That's where anger takes us because its purpose is to motivate us, to get us mobile and ready to defend ourselves or get ourselves out of the space we're in. It's a really useful emotion. There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with anger. Anger is not negative in that sense. It's the behaviors that come with it that can cause us grief and trouble. You know, if someone crosses a boundary,
Hmm.
I expect you to feel angry about it.
Of course.
Yeah, that's a perfectly normal reaction.
Hmm.
But feeling anger and then adopting the wrong behavior gets you potentially into a lot of trouble. And we're also creatures of habit. So once you start doing something when you're angry, chances are you're going to carry on doing it because we always step into our habits.
Okay, so let's say, for example, you're driving along and someone hits your car. Your instant emotion is going to be, for God's sake, you're going to feel angry.
Yes, because you've just been attacked,
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah. And then you get out of the car, you look at the damage. The damage is going to be thousands of pounds. You may be, the car may be wrecked,
Yeah.
and you're feeling this anger. You're probably now late to whatever you're going to. What should the behavior be after that? So you're feeling this anger. You're getting more angry because
Yes.
something you love and
Yeah.
cherish is now potentially gone forever. What's your what's the behavior?
Depending on who you are, it's either, as you suggested, walk away. Yeah. And if you've got a history of reacting violently, then walk away is probably your best starting point.
Hmm.
But if you're not in that space, breathing. Okay, breathing is a brilliant tool for all sorts of different reasons. Obviously, it keeps us alive, so I wouldn't suggest stopping it. But there are there are particular breathing patterns that go with anger.
Hmm.
Okay, so we start really gulping in lots of air because we need the oxygen. We're ready to fight. So if you can adopt a breathing pattern which tells your body we're not going into fight routine, you can actually bring all of the levels down. You're still going to be a bit pissed off, but actually that's okay.
Hmm.
That's still a reasonable space to be in. We want you to be able to think using the new brain, not the old brain.
Hmm.
So breathing exercises, and there's a particular breathing um, option that I've got,
Okay,
which is quick. I mean, it's not magic, you understand,
of
but it's quick
course.
and it's not very noticeable when you're doing it. So no one's necessarily going to notice that you're trying to contain yourself and avoid pummeling them into the ground.
Yeah.
So um, it involves counting and it involves breathing in through your nose. Okay, so you breathe in through your nose for a count of six, and you can hold if you want to, or you can then just breathe out through your mouth for a count of eight. So we're counting because I need you to focus on what you're doing. I need your attention away from the thing that has just annoyed you.
Okay.
And the out breath must be longer than the in breath. So if the numbers don't work for you, that's okay. But the out breath must be longer than the in breath. That's it. That's the mechanism. And you can do three or four of those and it'll take the edge off.
Okay.
You can do as much as you like. I mean, there's no overdosing on it. But the idea is by deliberately adopting that breathing pattern, the signal goes back to the body because you're not now gulping in huge amounts of oxygen because you're going to get ready to go into
Hmm.
battle. The body actually says, okay, hang on, this is de-escalating. I can wind down, which means that actually your new brain has more chance of stepping in because the body's let go, old brain is no longer in charge. You've got a chance of reducing the stress you're going through. You can use that under any stressful set of circumstances, and most people will not notice you're doing it.
Yeah, that's really smart
Yeah,
because as soon as you said breathing, my instant thought was, oh God, like it's gonna be like I'm gonna be sitting there going, like, you know, it's gonna look a bit
yeah,
weird. But again, it
yeah,
shouldn't now. Like all jokes aside, it shouldn't now. If this is something that's gonna help you stay away from that physical aggression, then just do it. Just do it. It's
yeah,
fine. You would much rather be looked at as a person who's breathing funny than a person behind bars arrested, and now your whole
yeah.
life is going to go to
Changes.
shambles because your car got hit or whatever. So I
Yeah.
think that's such a valuable lesson to teach, especially younger men, because let's be honest, they haven't learnt to regulate their emotions.
It's really quite difficult. Young men in their early 20s, they haven't finished all of the work they need to be doing internally with all of the wiring.
Mm,
They are not finished products.
yeah.
So it is tough, and it's a hell of a change
Mm,
from a boy to a man. There you are in your early 20s. You have this brilliant body that can do all these sort of things and recover really quickly. One of the things I really miss now. And you've got all of these really powerful drivers,
mm,
and there aren't many practiced safe escapes for some of the difficult stuff.
yeah.
So you're more likely to end up in tricky situations, and you haven't got an experience of being in them before. It's almost like a perfect storm, but it's not their fault.
Mm,
It's a complicated thing, this whole becoming a man and maturing and all the rest of it, and it takes time. And if you've got the wrong messages being thrown at you all the time on social media, yeah, that doesn't help.
it's a dangerous space to be in. For I don't think it's just for young men; it's for young women as well. Social media can be so addictively intoxicating that I don't know how we can stop that as a society. But the only way we can do that is by having conversations like this, hoping that it reaches the right audience and they learn something from it. And that's the best I think we can do right now.
Mm.
What's your thoughts on the whole social media side of things and the role models we're actually gaining from social media who ain't doing the right thing, who ain't
No.
preaching the right messages? How can we stop
Well,
young people?
it is tricky. Yeah,
Mm,
it is tricky because we are by design we are storytellers
mm,
and we live our stories. Yeah, so imagine if that's the wiring we've got, and you get something as shiny and glossy as social media telling us these very short stories,
mm,
but presenting that they're really long life describing stories, it's almost guaranteed to work. We're designed to listen to stories and to then try and live them. In fact, the whole narrative therapy is all based about the idea that we do live our stories. So the reason social media is so effective is because that's how we're wired. We like stories.
mm,
They make sense to us. They give us something to work with. So the only defense against it, I think, is, as with all other powerful stuff, is not to get dragged in to the addictive phase where you're there on it all day, every day,
mm,
because it's so powerful. It is powerful. It's just like alcohol. Alcohol is great, but too much of it does all sorts of damage. Social media is great, and being able to get in touch with people across the world is great, but absorbing all those stories that are so carefully put together,
mm.
and my argument be, and don't reflect real life
Yeah,
for most of us.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that again. It's that setting that expectation so high,
Yes.
it's not achievable.
No. And you end up being disappointed, unhappy, and instead of motivating us to be better, it depresses us.
It does. Yeah. So, Will,
Yeah.
I know we're coming up to the end of the podcast,
Okay.
and I wanted to ask you if you could give advice to younger men, well, I guess any man, what's the best advice you could give them? There's probably so much.
I guess I would be imagine that these two are related.
Okay.
don't believe everything you see,
Mhm.
and don't believe your inner critic when it's at its most severe, because we can be really harsh on ourselves
Mm.
because we don't achieve whatever it is we want to achieve. And the impact is punishment. It's very negative. So it's about being kinder to yourself and don't trust all the messages you get.
It's great advice. It's great advice,
Yeah,
Will. Thank you so much for being a part of the second episode. I really
no,
appreciate it,
that
and it's been such
was
a
really enjoyable.
valuable
Thank you very much for
conversation.
inviting me.
Ah, my pleasure, Will. My pleasure. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Honestly, the more people we reach, the more support we can offer. And don't forget, Onward Shift isn't just a podcast. We've got a number of resources on our website, so please don't forget to check out www.onwardshift.com, where you'll find counsellors, keynote speakers, coaches, blogs, and so much more. Until next time, don't forget to keep having these important conversations.